I am 26 years old. For most of my life, I believed my family was a safe harbor, a place where the normal currents of jealousy and competition might exist, but where the anchor of love would always hold us fast. I was wrong. The anchor was rusted through, and I was the one they were about to cut loose, leaving me to drift in a storm they created. It all became clear at my sister's surprise 30th birthday party, the one I spent weeks planning. The air in the rented hall was thick with laughter and the scent of catered food. I had done a good job. Balloons in her favorite shade of silver bobbed against the ceiling, and a playlist of her nostalgic college hits was playing just loud enough to make people want to dance. My fiancé, Liam, squeezed my hand. He was a good man, or so I had spent the last 2 years believing. His smile was warm, and his eyes, when they looked at me, used to make me feel like the only person in the world. Tonight, they seemed to be scanning the room, looking for something or someone other than me. I brushed the feeling aside. It was a party. I was being paranoid. My sister Chloe was the center of attention, as always. She was beautiful, charismatic, and had a way of making every story about her. Even on birthdays that were not her own, she somehow ended up holding court. So on her actual 30th, she was in her element. She accepted compliments with a practiced, self-deprecating grace that wasn't genuine. She would touch someone's arm and say, "Oh, this old thing?" about her designer dress, knowing full well it was new and expensive. I had tried for 26 years to love her without reservation. It was a constant effort. Her love was conditional, a prize to be won and easily lost. When I got a better grade in school, she would pout for a week. When I got the lead in a play, she suddenly developed a mysterious illness that required my parents' full attention. When I got engaged to Liam, a man she had openly flirted with when we first started dating, the chill from her became a palpable frost. Still, I planned this party. I called her friends, coordinated with my parents, and paid for the deposit on the hall with my own savings. I did it because I was the good sister, the peacekeeper, the one who absorbed the family's tensions so everyone else could have a nice time. Liam's parents, Joan and Robert, were there. They were polite, reserved people who valued stability and a good reputation above all else. I had been trying to win them over for months. They were always perfectly cordial, but I could feel their assessment in every question they asked about my career, my finances, my future plans. They were weighing my worthiness to join their pristine family tree. I felt like I was on a permanent job interview. "Anna, you've done a wonderful job," Joan said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Chloe must be so thrilled." "I hope so," I said. "She deserves a great birthday." Robert nodded, looking over my shoulder toward the bar. "She's a very impressive young woman. Very put together." The unspoken comparison hung in the air between us. "Unlike you." I didn't know where that thought came from, but it was there. It was a feeling I'd been getting from them for a while, a subtle sense of them handling me with kid gloves. As if I were a fragile object they were afraid of breaking. I smiled and excused myself, my own drink suddenly tasting sour. I found Liam talking to one of his cousins. He pulled me into his side, but his arm felt heavy, obligatory. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Fine," I lied, just making sure everyone is having fun. His eyes flicked away from mine again, toward a corner of the room. I followed his gaze and saw Chloe talking animatedly to a small group. Her hands were flying as she told some story, her audience captivated. I saw Liam's parents standing with her, listening intently. Joan had a hand on Chloe's arm, her expression one of deep sympathy. Robert was nodding slowly, his brow furrowed with concern. A knot of dread tightened in my stomach. What were they talking about? An hour later, after the cake had been cut and the chorus of happy birthday had faded, I saw it again. Chloe had pulled Liam aside near the emergency exit. Her back was to the room, but I could see his face. He looked pale, uncomfortable, almost sick. He was running a hand through his hair, a nervous habit I knew well. He kept glancing over at me, then quickly looking away. Chloe was speaking in a low, urgent tone. I felt a cold prickle of fear. This wasn't a friendly chat. This was something else. I decided I couldn't ignore it. I walked toward them, my steps feeling strangely heavy. I pasted a smile on my face, determined to act casual. "Everything all right over here?" I asked, trying to sound breezy. Chloe turned around. Her face was a mask of sweet, sisterly concern. There was a glint in her eye, a tiny spark of triumph that she couldn't quite hide. She patted Liam's arm in a way that was both familiar and proprietary. He flinched, just slightly. "Oh, hi, Anna," she said, her voice like honey. "We were just talking. Don't worry." She then looked directly at Liam, her smile widening. And then she said the words that would detonate my entire life. I told them everything. She gave my shoulder a light squeeze as if we were sharing a secret, and then she walked away, melting back into the crowd. She left me standing there with my fiancé under the humming fluorescent lights of the corridor. The party music sounded distant, muffled. "Liam," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "What did she mean? What did she tell them?" He wouldn't look at me. He stared at the scuffed floor, at the fire extinguisher on the wall. Anywhere but at my face. "It's nothing," he said, his voice strained. "It's just Chloe. You know how she is. Just being dramatic." "No," I said, a new, firm resolve hardening in my chest. This was different. "What did she tell you? And who is them?" From across the room, I saw my mother watching us. Her hand was pressed to her mouth and her face was utterly pale. She looked terrified. When our eyes met, she didn't offer a reassuring smile. She just looked away, her shoulders slumping, as if she were carrying a weight too heavy to bear. In that moment, I knew. Something was terribly, terribly wrong. And my family, the people who were supposed to be my harbor, were the ones who had steered me directly into the storm. The ride home was a study in silence. Liam drove, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. I sat in the passenger seat, staring out at the blurred streetlights, the 6 words Chloe had said echoing in my head. I told them everything. Everything. What was everything? My mind raced through every secret I had, every mistake I had ever made. Had she told them about the time I failed my driving test twice? The stupid crush I had on a teacher in high school? Nothing seemed big enough to warrant the look on Liam's face or the sheer terror in my mother's eyes. The silence in the car was heavier than any argument. It was a suffocating blanket of things unsaid. When we finally pulled into our driveway, I didn't wait for him to turn off the engine. "We need to talk," I said, my voice flat. He sighed a long, weary sound. "Anna, can we not do this tonight? I'm tired." "No," I said, turning to face him. The dim light from the dashboard cast shadows across his face, making him look like a stranger. "We are going to do this right now. What did my sister say to you?" He finally looked at me and his eyes were full of a miserable conflict. "It doesn't matter." "It matters to me," I shot back. "She said she told them everything. I saw her talking to your parents. Then I saw her talking to you. You looked like you were going to be sick. So, tell me, what is this horrible everything that she shared?" He slumped back in his seat. "She was just talking. You know how she gets after a couple of glasses of champagne? She embellishes." "Embellishes what, Liam?" I pressed, my patience wearing thin. I felt a frantic energy buzzing under my skin. I needed to know. I needed to understand the shape of the weapon that had been aimed at me. "What was the topic of conversation?" He was quiet for a long moment. I could hear the engine ticking as it cooled. "It was about college," he finally mumbled, his voice so low I could barely hear him. "Your sophomore year." My blood went cold. It felt like plunging into an icy lake. My sophomore year. The year everything had fallen apart. I had gone through a brutal breakup with my first serious boyfriend, my grades had plummeted, and I had sunk into a deep, disorienting depression. It was the darkest period of my life. I had gotten help. I went to therapy. I worked hard to understand my anxiety, and I slowly, painstakingly rebuilt myself. I was proud of how far I had come. It was a part of my story, a scar that proved I could heal. I had told Liam about it myself, months ago, on a quiet night when we were sharing our vulnerabilities. I had trusted him with that fragile piece of my past. "What about it?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. He shifted uncomfortably. She she just filled in some of the details. For my parents. They were asking about you, just getting to know you better. And Chloe, she wanted to make sure they had the full picture. The betrayal was so sharp, so sudden, it literally took my breath away. She had gone behind my back. She had taken my most painful experience and served it up as party gossip to the two people whose approval I was desperate to earn. And Liam. Liam had let her. He had stood there and listened. He hadn't defended me. He hadn't shut it down. "The full picture?" I repeated, the words tasting like ash. "Or her picture?" "What did she say, Liam?" "I want to know exactly what she said." He shook his head, looking miserable. "I don't remember the exact words. It's not important. It doesn't change anything between us. I know you. I know who you are now. But it does change things." I could hear my voice rising, but I couldn't stop it. "The fact that you won't tell me what she said proves that it was bad. If it was nothing, you would just tell me. What lies did she tell about me?" "She didn't lie," he said defensively, and that single phrase confirmed my worst fears. He believed her. "She just explained how difficult it was for you. How much help you needed." "How much help she gave me, I bet," I said, the pieces clicking into place with sickening clarity. Chloe hadn't just told them my story. She had rewritten it with herself as the star, the devoted, saintly sister who had saved her basket case sibling from the brink. "It doesn't matter what she said," Liam insisted, his voice pleading now. "My parents think she's a wonderful sister. They were impressed by how much she cares about you." I stared at him, my heart hammering against my ribs. He didn't get it. He didn't get it at all. He saw a caring sister. I saw a saboteur. He saw a conversation. I saw a character assassination. And he was defending it. He was defending her. "I want you to sleep in the guest room tonight," I said, my voice devoid of all emotion. It was the only thing I could think to do to create a space between us. A space where I could breathe without choking on the stench of his betrayal. He looked shocked. "Anna, don't be like this. We can talk it through." "There's nothing to talk through until you can tell me the truth," I said, opening my car door. "And until you understand why what just happened is so wrong." I walked into our house, the house we had been building into a home, and it felt like a foreign country. I went to the guest room, took out the spare pillows and a blanket, and put them on the bed. I didn't look at him when he came inside. I just closed the guest room door behind me and went to our bedroom, locking the door. I slid down to the floor, my back against the wood, and finally let the tears come. It wasn't just about Chloe anymore. My sister had planted a bomb in my life. But my fiancé had handed her the matches. I didn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of the party. Chloe's smug smile. Liam's averted eyes. My mother's pale, frightened face. It was a triptych of betrayal, and I was at the center of it. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Chloe's voice. I told them everything. The words were a poison, seeping into every happy memory I had with Liam, tainting it. The sun came up, casting a gray light into the room. I heard Liam moving around, the creak of the guest room door, the sound of the coffee maker. He was trying to pretend it was a normal morning. I felt a surge of cold anger. There was nothing normal about this. I picked up my phone and called my mom. She answered on the first ring, her voice tight with anxiety. "Anna, is everything okay?" No, Mom, it's not, I said, skipping any pleasantries. I need to know why you looked like you'd seen a ghost last night when you saw me talking to Liam. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could hear her breathing, a shallow, nervous sound. Oh, honey, I just had a headache. The music was so loud and I was feeling a bit overwhelmed by the crowd. It was such a flimsy, transparent lie. It made me even angrier. Don't lie to me, Mom. Not you too. This is about Chloe, isn't it? You knew she was going to talk to Liam and his parents. You knew what she was going to say. Another silence, this one heavier than the first. Anna, you know your sister loves you, she finally said, her voice wavering. It was the same tired line she'd been using my whole life to excuse Chloe's behavior. She worries about you. She doesn't want to see you get hurt again. Get hurt? I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. She's the one hurting me. She's trying to poison my relationship. She's painting me as some fragile, unstable wreck to the parents of the man I'm supposed to marry. And you're defending her. I'm not defending her, she whispered. I don't want you two to fight. It's too late for that, I said, my voice hard. A fight is exactly what's coming. I hung up the phone, my hand trembling. My own mother was an enabler. She would rather watch my life get torn apart than confront her favored, more difficult daughter. I felt utterly and completely alone. I needed to talk to someone who was on my side. I called Sarah, my best friend since kindergarten. She picked up immediately. Hey, how was the big party? I didn't even try to pretend. The whole story came tumbling out of me in a torrent of hurt and rage. I told her about Chloe's words, Liam's weakness, my mother's denial. When I was done, there was a moment of stunned silence on her end. Then, she exploded. That manipulative, narcissistic, I can't even say the words. Sarah's fury was a balm to my wounded spirit. She's trying to sabotage you, Anna. It's the oldest trick in the book. She's preemptively painting you as unstable. That way, if you and Liam ever have a real problem, or if he does something wrong and you react, his family will automatically think, oh, there goes fragile Anna having another one of her episodes. She's not protecting you. She's building a cage around you. Hearing Sarah articulate it so clearly solidified the resolve that had been forming in me. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was a calculated attack. What do I do? I asked, my voice small. You don't let her get away with it, Sarah said firmly. You have to confront her, and you need to figure out exactly what lies she told. Sarah was right. I couldn't let this fester. I got dressed, my movements jerky and robotic. I didn't say a word to Liam as I walked out the door. I drove to Chloe's apartment, a sleek modern place that was always impeccably clean, much like the facade she presented to the world. She opened the door wearing silk pajamas and holding a mug of coffee. She looked surprised to see me, but quickly rearranged her features into a look of concern. Anna, what are you doing here so early? Is everything okay? No, Chloe, it's not, I said, pushing past her into the apartment. We need to talk about what you said last night. She closed the door slowly, her expression one of pure innocence. What are you talking about? Don't play dumb with me, I snapped. You know exactly what I'm talking about. You cornered my fiancé and his parents and told them God knows what about my mental health. She let out a little, tinkling laugh, as if I were a child telling a silly story. Oh, that. Gosh, you are being so dramatic. Liam's parents were just asking what you were like in college. I was being honest. I told them how strong you were to get through such a difficult time. I was bragging about you, Anna. It was a compliment. The gaslighting was so blatant, so shameless. It was almost impressive. A compliment? Liam told me you filled in gaps. What gaps did you feel the need to fill in, Chloe? She took a sip of her coffee, her eyes cool and steady over the rim of the mug. Honestly, I don't remember every single word. We were just having a conversation at a party. It wasn't a deposition. You really need to learn to relax. Why are you trying to start a fight with me? Is everything okay with you and Liam? You seem really stressed out lately. She did it. She had twisted the entire thing back onto me. In the space of 30 seconds, she had framed me as dramatic, paranoid, and stressed. She had implied that the problem wasn't her malicious gossip, but my reaction to it. It was a master move, one she had been perfecting our entire lives. I stared at her, my mouth opening and closing with no sound coming out. I had come here for a confrontation, for answers, but she was an expert at this game. She built walls of plausible deniability and then accused you of being crazy for trying to climb them. You're lying, I finally whispered. Her face hardened. The sweet facade dropped, and for a second I saw the cold, hard core of her personality. No, Anna. You're hysterical, and I think you should leave my apartment before you say something you'll regret. I walked out of her pristine apartment and back into the hallway, which suddenly felt grimy and dark. I felt worse than before. I had no proof, only my gut feeling and Liam's cowardly half-admissions. Chloe had just demonstrated that she would lie to my face without flinching. I was in a battle of her word against mine, and she had spent years ensuring that everyone in our lives saw her as the stable, reliable one. I got into my car and just sat there, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. She wasn't just going to get away with it. She was going to win. The days that followed were a cold war fought in the trenches of my own home. Liam tried to bridge the divide with small gestures. He'd make my coffee in the morning, suggest we watch my favorite movie, or ask about my day with a forced cheerfulness that set my teeth on edge. He was trying to paper over a canyon. He wanted to pretend the bomb hadn't gone off, even as we were both choking on the smoke. Are you still mad at me? He asked one evening as I was pointedly reading a book on my side of the sofa. I'm not mad, Liam, I said, not looking up. I'm assessing. Assessing what? It was one stupid conversation. Your sister has a big mouth. It's over. It's not over, I said, finally closing my book and looking at him. It's not over because you still don't see what the problem is. The problem isn't just that Chloe has a big mouth. It's that she used it to deliberately misrepresent me, and you stood by and let it happen. And now my future mother-in-law probably thinks I'm one bad day away from a straitjacket. He recoiled as if I'd slapped him. That's not true. My mom doesn't think that. How do you know? I challenged. Have you talked to her? Have you clarified what Chloe said? Have you defended me at all? His silence was the answer. He hadn't. He was hoping it would all just blow over. He was a conflict avoider, and I had mistaken his passive nature for a peaceful one. I was realizing, with a horrifying clarity, that his desire for peace meant he would always take the path of least resistance, even if that path led right over my feelings. Then, the call I was both dreading and hoping for came. It was Joan, Liam's mother. Her voice was bright and syrupy on the phone. Anna, dear, I was hoping you might be free for lunch this week. Just the two of us girls, she said. There's a little bistro I've been wanting to try. This was it. This was my chance to hear for myself what damage had been done. I'd love that, Joan, I said, my voice betraying none of the turmoil inside me. We met at a chic little restaurant with white tablecloths and overpriced salads. Joan was dressed impeccably, a string of pearls at her throat. She chattered about the weather, about a charity event she was chairing, about the wedding plans. It was all a carefully constructed preamble. I just waited, picking at my food, letting her steer the conversation. Finally, after the waiter had cleared our plates, she leaned forward, her expression shifting to one of practiced sincerity. Anna, she began, Liam told us that you had a rather difficult time a few years ago in college. And I just want you to know, our family is a safe space. If you ever feel overwhelmed by the wedding planning or by anything at all, you can always talk to us. We just want to make sure Liam is supported. The last line was a gut punch. We just want to make sure Liam is supported. The implication was as clear as day. I was the liability. I was the ticking clock. They weren't worried about me. They were worried about the burden I might become for their perfect son. Sarah's words came rushing back to me. She's painting you as unstable, so they'll always side with him. I took a slow, deliberate sip of my water, forcing myself to remain calm. My anger was a cold, hard ball in my stomach. Thank you, Joan. I appreciate you saying that. It was a challenging time, but I learned a lot from it. Could you tell me, what exactly did Chloe say to you? I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. Joan got flustered, her perfectly applied composure slipping for a fraction of a second. Oh, just the broad strokes. That you had a bit of a breakdown, and that you needed a great deal of support from your family to get back on your feet. She was so worried about you. A breakdown? I repeated the word, letting it hang in the air between us. It was a clinical, dramatic word. A word I had never used. That's a strong term. I was dealing with anxiety, and I saw a therapist who was wonderful. Of course, dear. Of course, she said quickly, waving her hand dismissively. Whatever you want to call it. The point is, Chloe was just so wonderful through it all. She mentioned that she basically had to move in with you for a while to make sure you were eating and even getting out of bed in the morning. She's such a devoted sister. You're very lucky to have her. I felt the blood drain from my face. That was the lie. That was the core of the story she had spun. It was a complete and utter fabrication. Chloe had visited me exactly once that entire semester. She had stayed for 2 hours, complained that my dorm room was depressing, and then left because she had a party to get to. She hadn't made me a single meal. She hadn't sat with me. She had offered a few platitudes and then vanished. Now, in her retelling, she was Florence Nightingale, and I was the mad woman in the attic. I managed to hold myself together for the rest of the lunch. I smiled. I nodded. I said all the right things. But inside, a cold, hard rage was beginning to solidify into a plan. This was not a simple act of jealousy anymore. This was a premeditated campaign to redefine my past and control my future. Chloe hadn't just exaggerated. She had created an entirely new reality. I went home in a daze. Liam was there, working from the dining room table. He looked up and smiled. How was lunch with my mom? Enlightening, I said, my voice flat. I walked past him into my old office, a room filled with boxes from my childhood home that I had never fully unpacked. I knew what I had to do. I had to find proof. I had to find something, anything that would disprove Chloe's heroic narrative. I started tearing through the boxes, looking for my old college things. I was searching for my journals. I had kept detailed journals all through college, writing down everything. My therapy appointments, my feelings, my frustrations. I had written about that one brief visit from Chloe. I remembered writing about how disappointed I was, how I wished she had stayed longer. It was all in there. It was the truth, in my own handwriting. I found the box labeled College Mementos. I pulled it open, my heart pounding. Photo albums, old textbooks, concert tickets, but no journals. I emptied the entire box onto the floor. They weren't there. A sickening realization washed over me. I had a clear memory of packing them. I had put them in this very box. I stood up and walked to my childhood bedroom in my mind. I pictured the desk where I used to write, the bookshelf where I kept the completed journals. And then another memory surfaced. A few months ago, before the engagement, Chloe had asked to borrow a suitcase that was stored in my old closet. She had been in my room, alone. She had taken them. She had known even then that she might one day need to erase the real story. This wasn't a spontaneous, jealous outburst at a party. She had been planning this. She had been laying the groundwork for this sabotage for months, maybe even years. She hadn't just told a lie. She had actively destroyed the evidence of the truth. I sank to the floor amidst the clutter of my past, feeling a despair so profound it was almost paralyzing. How could I fight a ghost? How could I disprove a story when the storyteller had burned the history books? The despair lasted for a full day. I moved through my life like a ghost, the world muted and gray. Liam's attempts to connect with me felt like a buzzing annoyance. He couldn't understand the depth of the violation. To him, it was a family squabble. To me, it was psychological warfare, and I was losing. I felt cornered, helpless. Chloe had my past, Liam had my future, and I was stuck in a present that felt like a nightmare. I needed an ally. I needed someone who had been there, someone who knew the truth. And as much as I hated to admit it, as much as she had already let me down, there was only one person left: my mother. I drove to my parents' house without calling first. I found my mom in the back garden, tending to her roses. She looked up when she heard me, and her face was a mixture of love and guilt. She knew why I was there. I didn't start with accusations. I didn't have the energy for another fight. I just sat down on the little garden bench, and the carefully constructed dam I had built inside myself finally broke. I put my face in my hands and started to sob, not loudly, but with the quiet, wrenching sobs of someone who has reached their absolute limit. "Mom," I choked out, the words thick with tears. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Chloe told Joan that she had to move in with me in college. She told her I had a breakdown. She's making everyone believe I'm broken, and Liam is starting to believe it too. And you're just letting her. My mother sat down next to me, her hands hovering for a moment before she finally rested one on my back. She was crying, too. Silent tears streamed down her face. "I'm so sorry, Anna," she whispered, her voice thick. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know how to stop her. I never have." It was the first honest thing she had said to me since the party. It was a confession. She wasn't just a bystander. She was a failed gatekeeper. "Why does she do it?" I asked, my voice raw. "Why does she hate me so much?" "She doesn't hate you, honey," my mom said. But then she hesitated. "She's jealous. It's a poison in her, and it has been since you were little girls. Anything you had, she wanted. Any attention you got, she saw it as something stolen from her. But it got so much worse when you got engaged to Liam." She had just been dumped by that guy she was seeing, the one she thought was the one. She couldn't stand to see you so happy when she was so miserable. The motive was so petty, so childish, but it made a horrible kind of sense. My happiness was an insult to her unhappiness. Then, my mother took a deep breath and said the words that changed everything. "She didn't take your journals, Anna. I did." I lifted my head and stared at her, my tears forgotten. "What?" "I saw her," my mom explained, her voice gaining strength. "I came home early one afternoon a few weeks ago, and I saw her coming out of your old room." She looked guilty. I asked her what she was doing, and she said she was just looking for an old photo. I didn't believe her. After she left, I went into the room. I could tell she'd been through your things. Your desk drawer was open. I knew she was looking for those journals. I knew she was up to no good. So I took them. I hid them. She stood up. "Come with me." I followed her into the house, my heart beginning to pound with a new, unfamiliar feeling. It was hope. She led me to her bedroom, to the large closet where she kept her out-of-season clothes. She reached up to the top shelf and pulled down a dusty cardboard box. "I was afraid," she said, her voice trembling as she placed the box on the bed. "I was afraid of what she would do with them. And I was afraid of this exact fight happening. I was a coward, Anna. I chose hiding over protecting you, and I will regret that for the rest of my life." She opened the box, and there they were, my journals, a stack of 5 spiral-bound notebooks filled with my messy handwriting. But there was something else in the box, tucked underneath them, a bundle of letters tied with a faded ribbon. "What are these?" I asked, reaching for them. "Those," my mom said, her face grim, "are letters Chloe wrote to me when she was in college. Read this one." She handed me a thin blue airmail envelope. The postmark was from October of my sophomore year, the exact month I had been at my lowest point. I unfolded the single sheet of paper inside. Chloe's familiar, loopy handwriting filled the page. It was full of complaints about her classes, a professor she hated, a boy who wasn't paying enough attention to her. And then I saw my name. "I don't know what I'm going to do about Anna," she had written. "Mom, she calls me every week crying about that idiot Mark. It's so draining. Honestly, I wish she'd just get over it already. It's not my job to be her therapist. I've got my own life to worry about, you know?" I read the words again and again. It's not my job to be her therapist. This was the caring, devoted sister? This was the woman who had supposedly moved in with me to nurse me back to health? This letter was the truth. It was cold. It was selfish. And it was the exact opposite of the story she had told Liam's parents. It was the proof. It was the weapon. "There's more," my mom said, her voice hard now. She had moved to the small desk in her bedroom and turned on her computer. She clicked through old files until she found what she was looking for. An email. "I forwarded this to myself years ago," she said. "It's from Chloe to your Aunt Carol. From the same week as that letter." She turned the screen toward me. The subject line was family drama. The email was short and vicious. "Ugh, have you talked to Anna lately? She's being so dramatic again about the breakup. I swear she just does it for attention. I'm staying far away from that train wreck. Talk soon. XOXO Chloe." A train wreck. That's what she had called me. To my aunt, while pretending to my parents that she was a concerned sister. The scope of her deception, the years of backstabbing and two-faced maneuvering were laid bare in that one short email. I looked from the email to the letter and then to the journals. I had it all. Not just my story, but her own words, condemning her. The rage I had been feeling for days was gone, replaced by a chilling clarity. The game had changed. I wasn't the hysterical victim anymore. I was the one holding all the cards. "Thank you, Mom," I said, looking at her with a gratitude so immense it almost hurt. "You didn't just save my journals. You saved me." She nodded, tears in her eyes again. "What are you going to do?" I began to place the letters and my journals carefully back into the box. "I'm not going to start a fight," I said, a slow, cold smile spreading across my face. "I'm going to end one." The plan formed in my mind with crystalline precision. This couldn't be a screaming match. It couldn't be a flurry of angry texts. That would only feed Chloe's narrative of me as the emotional, unstable one. This had to be cold, calculated, and public. It had to be an execution. I went home and found Liam in the living room watching TV. He looked up, hopeful. When I walked in, I ignored his expectant smile. "Liam," I said, my voice calm and even. "I need you to do something for me. I need you to arrange a meeting. Here, at our house. I want you, your parents, my parents, and Chloe to be here. Sunday afternoon." He looked confused and a little scared. "A meeting? What for?" "Anna, I thought we were moving past this." "We are going to move past this," I said. "But first we are going to establish the truth. I have some things I need to clear up about the story Chloe told at her party. This isn't a request, Liam. This is a condition of our future. We do this my way, or we are done." The finality in my voice must have scared him because he finally nodded. "Okay," he said quietly. "Okay, Anna. I'll call my parents." The next few days were taut with anticipation. I spoke to my mom and dad. I told my dad everything, showing him the letters. His face, usually so jovial, hardened into a mask of quiet fury and disappointment. He looked at me and said, "You do what you have to do, Anna. Your mother and I will be there. We will back you up." My mom was nervous, terrified of the confrontation, but she was resolute. Her guilt had finally transformed into a protective instinct. Sunday afternoon arrived, gray and cold, mirroring the atmosphere inside our house. Liam had been walking on eggshells all weekend. He knew something was coming, but he had no idea what. His parents, Joan and Robert, arrived first. They looked uncomfortable, their faces etched with a polite concern that was clearly forced. They were here because their son had asked them to be, but they thought it was all a dreadful, unnecessary drama. My parents arrived next. My dad gave me a firm, supportive nod. My mom squeezed my hand, her own hand cold and trembling. She was scared, but she was here. She was with me. Finally, Chloe arrived. She breezed in, all smiles and feigned confusion. "Well, this is mysterious," she chirped, looking around the somber room. "What's the big secret meeting about?" She looked directly at me, a challenge in her eyes. She thought she had won. She thought this was me, flailing, trying to plead my case. She looked smug. We all sat down in the living room. It felt like a tribunal. Liam sat beside me on the sofa, but he was a million miles away, staring at the floor. His parents sat stiffly in 2 armchairs. My parents sat together on the love seat, a united front. Chloe chose a single chair, positioning herself slightly apart from everyone, as if she were an observer rather than a participant. I waited until the silence was uncomfortable. Then I began. "Thank you all for coming," I said, my voice steady, betraying none of the adrenaline coursing through my veins. "I asked you here because I wanted to clear the air about a story that has been circulating since Chloe's party. A story about my sophomore year of college." I saw Joan and Robert exchange a quick, uneasy glance. Liam sank lower into the sofa cushions. I turned my full attention to my sister. She was watching me with an amused, condescending expression. "Chloe," I said, keeping my tone perfectly level. "At your party, you spoke to Joan and Robert. Later, you confirmed to me that you had told them about my difficult year. You told Joan that I had, and I quote, a breakdown, and that you had to practically move in with me to take care of me. Is that an accurate summary of the story you told?" Chloe let out a small, theatrical sigh. "Anna, are we really doing this? I was just telling them how much I love my sister and how I was there for her. I honestly don't see what the big deal is. It was years ago." Joan, ever the conflict avoider, jumped in. "Anna, dear, we already told you. We understand. There's really no need for all this unpleasantness." This is the moment, the pivot. My voice turns from calm to sharp. It's not a request anymore. It's a statement. "This is the big deal, Joan," I say, my voice cutting through the tension in the room. "Because it's a lie." The word hangs in the air. Chloe's smug smile falters. A flicker of anger flashes in her eyes. "Excuse me?" she says, her voice rising. "How dare you call me a liar in front of everyone?" "I'm not calling you a liar, Chloe. I'm stating a fact," I say calmly. "Let's talk about the facts. The fact is, you visited me one time that entire semester. You stayed for 2 hours and you complained about the traffic on the drive up." "You don't remember correctly," she snaps, her composure starting to crack. She looks around the room for support, but finds only confused and wary faces. "You were a mess. Your memory is fuzzy. I was there for you constantly. I was on the phone with you every single night." "Were you?" I ask, my voice soft. I reach down beside the sofa and lift up a thin blue envelope. Chloe's eyes fix on it. I see a flicker of recognition, of dawning horror. "Then can you explain this letter?" I ask. "A letter you sent to Mom in October of that year. Would you like me to read it aloud?" I don't wait for an answer. I unfold the paper. My voice is clear and strong as I read. "I don't know what I'm going to do about Anna. Mom, she calls me every week crying about that idiot Mark. It's so draining. Honestly, I wish she'd just get over it already. It's not my job to be her therapist." I let the words settle into the dead silent room. Chloe's face is ashen. She turns to our mother, her eyes blazing with betrayal. "You saved that?" she hisses. "I did," my mother says, her voice shaking but firm. "I saved all of them." Chloe looks like she's been struck, but I'm not finished. I pick up my tablet from the coffee table and turn on the screen. "And if your memory is still fuzzy, Chloe," I continue, "perhaps you can explain this email you sent to Aunt Carol in the very same week. The subject line is family drama." I turn the screen so everyone can see it. but I read the crucial line aloud anyway. Anna's being so dramatic again. I swear she does it for attention. I'm staying far away from that train wreck. I turn the tablet off. The click echoes in the silence. Joan and Robert are staring at Chloe, their faces masks of shock and dawning disgust. The devoted sister they had admired was a fraud. So, you see, I say, my voice like ice now. All pretense of calm is gone, replaced by cold, hard anger. You weren't a supportive sister. You were an annoyed, dismissive one who found my pain to be a burden. And now, years later, you've invented a heroic story for yourself. A story designed to make you look like a saint? And to paint me as permanently unstable to my fiancé and his family. The only question I have left is why? Why would you do that? Chloe doesn't have an answer. She just starts to sob. But they aren't the wrenching sobs of remorse. They are the loud, theatrical sobs of someone who has been caught. I just wanted them to like me, she wails, looking at Joan and Robert. I was just trying to help. Help? I say, my voice incredulous. You call this helping? This was sabotage, Chloe. A deliberate, calculated attempt to ruin my reputation and undermine my relationship. Now I turn to the final target. The one whose betrayal cut almost as deep. Liam. He has been frozen this whole time, his face a canvas of shame and horror. And you, I say, my voice low and full of a pain he is only now beginning to understand. You stood there and listened to her. You heard her lies and you let them sink in. You came home and you made me feel crazy for being upset about it. You told me I was being dramatic. When you had to choose between my truth and her comfort, you chose her. You chose the easy path. Anna, I didn't know. He stammers, his eyes pleading with me. You didn't want to know. I cut him off, my voice rising with all the hurt I had suppressed. It was easier for you to believe that I was just being emotional, Anna, than to confront the fact that my sister is a malicious liar, and that you were a coward for not defending me. My hands are shaking as I twist the engagement ring on my finger. The diamond, which once seemed so full of promise, now feels like a piece of glass. I pull it off. It feels surprisingly light. I lean forward and slide it across the smooth surface of the coffee table. It glides silently and stops right in front of him. We're done, Liam, I say. The words are quiet, but they have the force of a landslide. His face crumbles. The color drains from it completely. He stares at the ring as if it's a venomous snake. His mother, Joan, looks at me, then at the weeping Chloe with utter revulsion, and then at her son with a look of profound pity. The perfect family has a crack right down the middle. Chloe is no longer crying. She's screaming. She's on her feet, pointing a trembling finger at our mother. You did this. You were always on her side. You traitor. My dad stands up. His voice is a low rumble of thunder that cuts through her hysterics. That is enough, Chloe, he says. You have done enough damage for one lifetime. Get your things and get out of this house. Chloe stares at him, stunned into silence. He has never, ever spoken to her like that. The shock on her face is absolute. She grabs her purse and, with one last look of pure hatred at me, she storms out of the house, slamming the door behind her. The room is silent again, except for the sound of Liam's ragged breathing. He's just sitting there, a broken man, staring at the ring that represents the future we no longer have. I don't feel triumph. I don't feel joy. I just feel a vast, empty calm. The storm has passed, and I am the only one left standing. The aftermath was not a single explosion, but a series of quiet, devastating shockwaves. Liam started calling me before I had even finished clearing away the coffee cups from the confrontation. The first time, I let it go to voicemail. The second time, too. By the 10th call, I knew I had to answer, not for him, but for me. I needed to close this door, not just slam it shut. Anna, please just talk to me, he said, his voice thick with desperation. I'm listening, Liam, I said, my own voice calm. I was sitting on the floor of the guest room, the room he had slept in after the party. It felt fitting. I'm so sorry, he began, the words tumbling out of him. I was a coward. You were right. I was a complete and total coward. I didn't know what she was saying was a lie, I swear. That's the problem, Liam, I said patiently, as if explaining a simple concept to a child. You didn't care enough to find out. You heard a story that made me sound weak and damaged, and you heard a story that made my sister sound heroic. And you accepted both. You never once stopped and thought, wait, that doesn't sound like the Anna I know. You never once questioned it, because on some level it was easier for you to believe I was fragile than to believe my sister was cruel. No, that's not true, he protested. I love you. Do you? I asked, the question genuine. Or do you love the idea of me? A version of me that fits neatly into your life. When things got complicated, when someone challenged that version, you didn't defend me. You just stood there. Your silence was an agreement, Liam. It was a betrayal as deep as her lies. He started to cry then, quiet, hiccuping sobs. What can I do? I'll do anything. I'll talk to her. I'll talk to my parents again. I'll tell everyone the truth. Please don't throw us away over this. This isn't over this, I corrected him gently. This is because of this. This was a test and you failed it. You showed me that when I am under attack, you will not be in my corner. You will be standing on the sidelines waiting to see who wins. I cannot marry a man like that. I cannot build a life on a foundation that is that weak. We talked for over an hour. He begged, he pleaded, he promised he would change. But I knew with a certainty that was bone deep that he wouldn't. Not in the way that mattered. He might learn to say the right things, but in a moment of crisis, his instinct would always be to protect himself and to avoid conflict. I had seen his true nature, and I couldn't unsee it. I have to go. Liam, I said finally, I wish you well, but we are over. I hung up the phone before he could say anything else. I felt a profound sadness, but also a sliver of relief. I had dodged a bullet. A lifetime of having to fight my own battles while my husband watched from a safe distance. The next conversation was with my mom. She came into the guest room and sat on the floor with me. We didn't speak for a long time. She just put her arm around me. I am so ashamed, Anna, she said, her voice choked with emotion. I've enabled her for her entire life. I knew she was being cruel to you, even when you were little girls. I saw it. But she would throw these terrible tantrums, screaming and crying, and I would just give in to make it stop. Your father and I, we just wanted peace. We never realized the price of that peace was your happiness. I know, Mom, I said, leaning my head on her shoulder. I understand. And I did. I understood the exhaustion that came with trying to manage Chloe. I was so afraid of her anger, she confessed, tears rolling down her cheeks. I've been afraid of it for 30 years. But when I saw your face at that party, and then when you came to me, so broken, I realized I was more afraid of losing you. I should have protected you. That's my only job as your mother, and I failed. You didn't fail today, I told her, my own eyes filling with tears. Today you saved me. You gave me the weapons I needed to fight back. We sat there for hours, talking. She told me stories I had never heard. Small instances of Chloe's manipulation from years ago that now fit into the larger pattern. The time Chloe lost my application for a summer camp she also wanted to go to. The time she told a boy I liked that I had a crush on his best friend. It was a long, dark history of petty sabotage, and my parents had smoothed over every single incident, calling it sibling rivalry. We cried together, for the years lost to her jealousy and for the relationship we could have had if they had intervened sooner. But as we talked, I felt a shift. A wound that had been festering my whole life was finally being cleaned. Our relationship wasn't just being repaired, it was being rebuilt on a new foundation of honesty. My dad came to see me the next day. He was a quiet man, not one for emotional discussions, which made his words all the more powerful. He sat in the armchair across from me, his hands clasped between his knees. "I haven't been able to sleep," he said, his voice gravelly. "I keep thinking about that letter." "Train wreck." "She called you a train wreck." He shook his head, a look of deep pain on his face. "I always thought it was just normal sister stuff. Annoying each other, competing. I never saw the poison in it. I didn't want to see it. I'm sorry, Anna. I failed you." "You didn't fail me, Dad," I said softly. "You just didn't know the extent of it." "I should have," he said firmly. "It's my job to know. Your mother and I, we let Chloe run this family with her moods for too long. That's over now." He looked me straight in the eye. "I'm proud of you. You were strong and you were honest and you did what you had to do. I want you to know that." He told me he had spoken to Chloe. It had not gone well. She had screamed and accused and taken no responsibility. He had told her she was not welcome at home for the foreseeable future. She needed to get help, and until she was willing to admit she had a problem, he couldn't have her toxicity around them. For the first time, my parents were choosing me. A few days later, I got a call from an unknown number. It was Joan. Her voice was completely different from the syrupy sweet tone she had used at lunch. It was subdued, heavy with shame. "Anna," she said, I am calling to apologize for my part in all of this." I waited, saying nothing. "I am so deeply ashamed," she continued. "We listened to Chloe's story and we judged you based on it. We thought we were being so clever, so discerning. And we were just being cruel. What you did on Sunday, it took a strength that I can only admire. You are not the person she painted you to be. You are the exact opposite." "Thank you for saying that, Joan," I said. It was more than I had expected. "I am also sorry for Liam," she said quietly. "He is a good man, but he is weak. His father and I, we have always made things easy for him. We have protected him from conflict. I see now that we did him a great disservice. We taught him to run from fights, not how to stand and fight for what is right." It was a stunning admission. She didn't ask me to take him back. She didn't make excuses for him. She just stated the truth. It was a strange, sad moment of connection with the woman who was almost my mother-in-law. Of course, my victory lap call was with Sarah. I recounted the entire confrontation, every line, every reaction. She cheered and whooped on the other end of the phone. "You did it!" she yelled. "You magnificent human. You didn't just scorch the earth, you salted it. How do you feel?" "I feel quiet," I said, and it was true. The constant buzzing anxiety was gone. The anger was gone. In its place was a profound sense of calm. I feel free. The final piece of the fallout came, as I knew it would, from my Aunt Carol. She was my mother's sister, a woman whose primary role in the family was to be the peacemaker, which really meant she was the chief rug sweeper. "Anna, honey, I heard there was some trouble," she said, her voice oozing with synthetic sympathy. "Your mother told me a little bit. Chloe is just devastated. Apparently your father has kicked her out." It all sounds so harsh. At the end of the day, you're family. Can't we all just find it in our hearts to forgive and forget? This was my chance to set a new precedent for the entire extended family. The old Anna would have mumbled in agreement and tried to smooth things over. The new Anna did not. "No, Aunt Carol, we can't," I said, my voice polite but firm as steel. What Chloe did was not a simple mistake. It was a malicious, calculated choice. And in this family, from now on, there are consequences for choices. She lied for years. She tried to destroy my relationship. She is not the victim here. So no, I will not be forgiving and forgetting. I will be remembering this for a very long time. There was a shocked silence on the other end. I had never spoken to her like that. "Well," she finally stammered. I just think family is the most important thing. I agree, I said. And that's why I'm not letting anyone in this family tear me down ever again. I politely ended the call, knowing I had just redrawn the map of our entire family dynamic. In the weeks that followed, I moved out of the home I had shared with Liam. I found a small, bright apartment in a part of the city I had always loved. The process of packing up my life, of separating my things from his, was sad, but also liberating. Each box I packed felt like a step away from the person I had been and a step toward the person I was becoming. My relationship with my parents blossomed. We had dinner once a week, and our conversations were real and honest, free from the shadow of Chloe's moods. My dad told me that Chloe had finally, reluctantly, agreed to see a therapist. He said it was a condition of him even speaking to her again. I felt a flicker of something, but it wasn't pity or satisfaction. It was just distance. Her journey was her own. It had nothing to do with me anymore. One evening, I was unpacking the last box of books in my new apartment. The setting sun was streaming through the window, making dust motes dance in the light. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Liam. "I know you don't want to hear from me," it read. "But I just wanted to tell you that my mom was right. I was weak. I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about not even questioning it. I'm sorry I wasn't the man you deserved." I read the text and I felt a sense of closure. He was beginning to understand. Maybe one day he would be a better man for someone else. I typed back a simple reply. "Thank you. I wish you the best." I put the phone down and looked around my new home. It was small, and it was mine. The quiet was a comfort. I thought about the engagement ring, sitting in a box somewhere in Liam's new, lonely life. Taking it off hadn't just been the end of a relationship. It was the end of me being the designated peacekeeper. It was the end of me making myself smaller to make others feel bigger. My sister had tried to define me by my weakest moment. But in the end, her actions had only revealed my greatest strength. They had all, in their own way, tried to make me feel small, fragile, and broken. But they had failed. I looked out the window at the city lights beginning to twinkle. They finally learned what it feels like to be small. And I finally learned how it felt to stand tall,